Welcome to Small Biz Life, episode 85, Building Dreams Together. Does this sound familiar?
Oh my God, I have so much to do today.
Don't forget to breathe.
But I have almost 400 emails in my inbox and 30 phone calls to make.
Have you looked into getting a virtual assistant yet?
Oh, and I need to schedule all my social media posts.
Did you drink anything today?
I had coffee.
Did you eat today?
Did I mention coffee's a bean?
This is Small Biz Life.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Small Biz Life. We're so glad you're with us this week. If you're a returning listener, thank you so much for being with us again. And if you're a new listener, thanks for checking us out. We hope that by the end of this episode, you'll be compelled to hit the subscribe button and check us out every week.
That's right.
And my name's Kristin Ingram.
And I'm Jeffrey W. Ingram.
And we are a husband and wife team, small business owners. And, I was thinking about it. We have been married, it'll be 16 years in May, and we have been small business owners in various businesses for 12 of those 16 years. So this topic is really near and dear to us because small business has been such a huge part of our marriage.
Yeah. And we know a lot of people who struggle because they have radically different goals than the loved ones in their life, whether it be their spouse or the people who are closest to them. They feel like they don't get the support that they should. And it worries us because, well, we want to see people survive and thrive together and dream big, everyone. And, and a lot of you might even think that it's easy for us because we have what you would think are the same dreams and same goals. And we really don't. They're similar and they maybe complement each other, which does make it easier. But, there's still struggles and differences on what's really important to us.
Right. And we may have similar goals and dreams, but often we have differing opinions on how you get there.
Yes.
And so that's kind of where our struggle points are, especially, we're managing 3 brands right now. So trying to determine which brand is the priority, what we should be doing for that brand, what the day-to-day work should look like.
Yeah. So, I don't want people to think just because the dreams on paper line up, it won't make it easier.
Right. And I know that that's something that some of you are struggling with. We asked in our group and, one of the responses had kind of talked about, we want this so badly. Right? But it causes conflict.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing is like the more you want something, often the more conflict can spring from it, especially if you both want it really badly. So we're going to kind of talk about some ways that you can mitigate the conflict that you have with either your spouse or your significant other. We're going to give you some really concrete tips that you can work on and some things to think about.
Yeah.
If you're having some trouble, whether your spouse either works with you or they don't. Okay. So I think a lot of people think this only happens when your significant other is actually a member of the business. And I think more often we see a lot of struggles where one person is a business owner and the other one is an employee working for, especially I think a large corporation. Yeah. This seems to be a big struggle.
Larger groups or whatever, and being a person who's actually worked in larger organizations, I actually kind of get where they're coming from. So these are some of the things that we really, I think we find it vital to talk about because one, we do a lot of research and listening and reading of what other people think. And a lot of times you'll see this almost cultish type of the request that you should be cutting those people out of your tribe, and which is really easy to say. And it might be one thing if it's someone that you went to high school with. But, when you talk about your spouse and family, that's just not necessarily an option.
Right. I think cutting your significant other out of your sphere is probably not a good way to go if you'd like to keep that person in your life.
Yeah. Yeah, most definitely. So the thing is, how do we work together? Because I even see this extending beyond just this idea of this is in general, our society right now doesn't work well together on things we disagree with for anything,
Right.
for politics, for anything. We need to start listening and sharing our thoughts in an actual dialogue.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I completely agree. So, I think the first step to this is you really have to understand yourself. There is a great tool. We're going to put a link to this on the website. It's called the 5 Love Languages. And
That is a good one.
yeah, and this is something that we both did because I think it's important that you understand your love language and your significant other. So what this does is it asks you a series of questions, and then it tells you what is the most gratifying way that somebody can show you that they love you.
And even when you know someone really well, like Kristin and I know each other really well, I think there were surprises for us looking at it as like, oh, there's this thing that's really important, and I never address that when we have discussions on conflict.
Yeah, so like one of them is like words of affirmation, one of them is like physical closeness, one of them is acts of kindness, which that one's mine. But it's really interesting because when you go through this, as business owners, I think we get really busy and we get distracted, and we're not tuned into our needs, and we're not tuned into our significant other's needs either.
Yeah, and we maybe use sort of pop psychology from magazines that we read as we're going through the checkout line, and we think, oh, well, if I want to get my spouse to listen to me, I need to do X. But the thing it's realized is when they're telling you that, they're selling you something, an idea, which might or might not work for your spouse, because ultimately we're all individuals. We all have different needs, different desires, and magazines just aren't going to get to that.
Exactly. So after you've done that, sit down and think about, what are your dreams? What do you really want in life? How will they benefit you? And what is it going to take for you to achieve them? Okay. Because if you don't have clarity on this, then you can't have the discussion that you need to have with your spouse. Or maybe your spouse is sitting there going, oh, here they are on business number 38. And, when the next shiny thing comes along, you've got to see this from both perspectives.
And now I want to talk to you as a business owner for a second. Now, a lot of times we spend a lot of effort thinking how our product will best benefit our customers. And then we try and use those benefits to sell our products or services to them. But when we deal with our spouse and our loved ones, that's usually not the thing that goes through the mind. It's, why won't you support me in what I want to do, instead of trying to sell them on what you're trying to do, the same way you would try and sell a customer, but instead of selling the product or service, you are selling the dream. And it's not through how it benefits you. Like if I came out right now and said, I want a new Maserati crossover car, and you're going to go buy my product so I can get this because that would be awesome of you. You might actually be a little repelled to, to buy the product or service from me because I'm thinking about myself. But if I explain the benefits to you of the product, maybe I can get the money to go buy the Maserati, which I actually don't want. I don't.
That's my thing. I want the Maserati.
But, when I'm selling you a product or an idea, it's from how it's going to benefit you. And this is even more important in relationships.
Yeah, and it's actually funny because this is something that we kind of talked about in HQ in the third week, is we talked about kind of how to get people to buy in, right? And how to get them to do what you want them to do. And I think a lot of times when we're dealing with, people that we love, we take that approach that it's about me and what I want, and you don't show them the benefits of this.
Yes.
Of taking a particular action. Like a lot of times, like let's say that you want your significant other to get healthier. And so you say, I need you to be around, the kids need you to be around, and you don't talk about the benefits to them. You don't talk about how, they'll have more energy, they'll be happier, they'll be able to enjoy life more with you and the kids. we just talk about what we want them to do.
Yeah. And I think this is going back, and it was a really good, I didn't even think about this when we were working the show notes about the love languages. That's where understanding their love language is important because, like we do our products, once again, it's what's the language we need to tell it to them in. We need to treat them like we would any other human being we're trying to convince. And really, this episode's a clever disguise for conflict resolution. But what makes this the most difficult kind is the emotion.
Right, exactly. So once you have all of this down and you kind of have an understanding of who you are, what your love language is, how does your dream benefit you, then we want you to go on a listening tour. We want you to sit down and, think about some of the things we just talked about. How will your dreams benefit them?
Yes.
What are your spouse's dreams or your significant other's dreams? How many of you have asked your significant other that?
Or even worse, and I've heard this a lot just in talking to people. This is anecdotal, not scientific evidence. But a lot of times I'll hear people complaining in one conversation about how their spouse is not supporting their dreams. And then in another conversation, they'll be complaining how their spouse is going out to do something that they think is a complete waste of time. And the thing is, if that is a dreamlike activity for them and you're poo-pooing that, don't be shocked when they're upset and it just hits them and they whack you back the same way. And maybe some of the conflict is sometimes caused by both parties, just taking shots at each other because they know it'll hurt each other a little bit. They're not trying to crush you, but they're just, well, you did it to me, I'm doing it to you. That's a very common human reaction.
It's kind of passive aggressive.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of the things I've seen in working with people over the last 15 years, and this holds true for business owners and non-business owners. I think this is just kind of common in our society. But people get married or they get into long-term relationships with people, and they never talk about what they want their lives to look like. I think this is especially true. They'll talk about, yes, we want to have kids. Okay, and we have kids. And then they get to the point where their kids grow up and they've never discussed what they want their retirement to look like. What do we want our later life to look like? And that's the reason you see, I think, a lot of divorces later on. We're seeing a huge uptick in divorces where people have been married for 20, 25 years.
Wow.
And a lot of times that's, the kids are grown up now and they go, I don't really know this person. I don't really have a lot in common with them. We don't really share any goals or dreams or, I've worked with couples before where one of them really wants to retire to Florida and the other one's like, I hate Florida.
Yeah.
I don't want to go to Florida. I want to stay here. And that is causing a huge amount of conflict because now they're 25 years into their marriage and they're just discussing this now.
Yeah. And I do think you don't need to have the same dreams as your loved ones. What you have to have is a desire to fight for each other's dreams. And sometimes compromise, because you know what? If you hate Florida and they want to move, maybe there's somewhere else warm that you could move to.
Right. But that's the thing is, like, if you never have these discussions, this is going to cause a lot of problems as you go, further on into your relationship. I know before we got married, we had a lot of conversations about stuff.
We talked a lot.
Where do you want to live? What do you want life to look like? We talked about this stuff, and I think a lot of couples don't do that.
Yeah.
I would love for you to sit down and, write down what you think your spouse wants your retirement to look like. And then I want you to go ask them. If we could do anything in retirement, what would you want that to look like?
And understand too, especially if you've been together for more than a couple of years, you probably know them better than anyone except for maybe themselves. And sometimes we're better at understanding our spouse than they are. And maybe if there's a disagreement, you might even be right, but maybe they don't know where their dream is. But it doesn't matter because they believe the dream is somewhere else. So you have to respect where they believe they are, and you have to assume that maybe they're right.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe there's something that they know that they're not sharing with you in a way that you're at least comprehending.
Right. And the thing is, you want to look for connections, even if it seems like their dream and your dream are at opposite ends of the spectrum. There are probably connections between them.
And I think one of the big risk areas for this, we talked about a little bit already, is your long-term 9-to-5 worker versus especially like an online entrepreneur, someone they come home and you're just on Facebook again. And they don't understand that that's your part of your job. And hopefully you're doing your job while you're on Facebook. But, to them, it's like, your work as you go, you press metal, you work in spreadsheets, you do this activity, that activity, you eat lunch, this activity, that activity, then you go home and watch TV. So maybe part of your dream, part of your journey is supporting them, right? Because I want you to be able to do this. When you retire, you've worked so hard. If you want to just go fishing or you want to climb Mount Everest, I want you to be able to do that because you go in every day 9 to 5.
Right. And I think that's another area of conflict between business owners and non-business owners, significant others, is for most of us, we are trying to build a business that we can do forever. Like, I can't imagine not doing this. I imagine, I imagine sitting down, once a week in our 70s and talking about small business. This is not the kind of thing where I'm like, all right, I'm going to do this for the next, 30 years, and then I'm going to shut it down and I'm going to go sit on a beach.
The point of this business is not a financial gain.
Right. Well, I mean, it is. It's to fund the lifestyle, but
that's not the point of the business. We could have chosen other businesses that were more lucrative if we just wanted to make money.
Right. But I think a lot of 9-to-5 folks, they want to retire and go fishing and, play with cars and, and be retired. And this causes a lot of strife between business owners and non-business owners.
Because one, from the non-business owner standpoint, we have to understand that it's not a lack of ambition on their part. They're just trying to get the work out of the way so that they can play. And to you, when you're a hardcore business owner and you love what you do, that is part of your playing.
Right. Yes.
And so you say, well, that's just not ambitious, or that's just not productive. Life doesn't, nor should it be productive all the time, because I trust you. If you're one of those people who tries to be productive 18 to 20 hours every day, you're going to burn out.
Right. And, I bet you that most of you at one point in your life, and maybe some of you are still there, you worked a 9-to-5 that you hated. Right. Most of the time, people are driven to entrepreneurship because they're passionate about something and it's not the thing they do in their 9-to-5. And so if you kind of think about how you felt in that 9-to-5 job, okay, and how you wanted to get out of it so desperately. Well, if your significant other has one of those jobs, they probably still feel that way. But they feel that the only way out of that job is at retirement.
That's right.
And so if you kind of put yourself in their shoes a little bit, it may help you understand them better.
Yeah. And also understand, too, that some people don't hate that. Some people want to work 9-to-5 jobs, and that's okay.
Right. Not everybody is meant to be an entrepreneur. And I know we kind of think that sometimes, like, oh, well, you could just start a business and it'd be great. And I love that. I think, people should start businesses, but I also know it's not for everybody.
I mean, we've had probably just as many conversations with people who are like, you're so good at what you do, you should start a business. And they're like, no, I don't want to do all of the businessy stuff. And you're like, oh, well, that's silly. I hate doing that stuff, but it's your own business. It's yours. And they're like, no.
It's a mindset. It's a thing. So when you are, let's try to talk about some ways to avoid conflict before it starts. So I think a lot of the conflict that arises between small business owners and their significant others typically has to do with boundaries. As small business owners, we are not very good at putting down our business.
No.
We often joke that this is a 24/7 lifestyle. And most people don't put any boundaries in place. That's what really frustrates your significant other.
And here's a hint. If you can learn how to do that, you'll actually find you're more productive in your business too. Because I know Kristin and I both will struggle with, we've started something else and like we're going to record. And like we'll be on our phone trying to take care of that thing as we're getting going. And we've had to get to a spot where we'll actually ask the other person to transition over. And we both do this because, we're trying to get, and we all do this. We're trying to get stuff done. But, even in our activities, we find that if we get transitioned over, we get it done better. Because trust us, if we were taking care of other activities while we were recording this or recording content for HQ, it would be a lot more boring.
Right. So, a couple things you can do, we're really big fans of you having a workspace that is dedicated to work. Not only is it a wonderful tax deduction, but it is. It's a great tax
deduction. And contact Kristin if you don't believe her.
Yeah. But it's also a really good way for you to say, okay, I'm stepping away from this workspace. I am now done for the day, right? And this is something that you can even let your significant other know. Like, while I'm here, I'm working. But at this, at 5 o'clock or at 6 o'clock, I'm going to step away from my desk and I am home.
Yeah.
Okay. I also think that another thing that you can do is to create a mental separation. So when you're done working for the day, it is a really good idea to, I stand up, take, 10 deep breaths and think to yourself, okay, my work day is over. And when I open my eyes, I'm going to be present with my family. I'm going to be present with my spouse, and the work day is done.
And I know sometimes when I'm struggling with this, I like to add in I like to think back to a time where Kristin and I we're having a great day together. We are having a blast together, and it'll bring some joy back into my brain and remind me that hey, silly, this is why you want and need to spend time with them.
No, I think that's a really good thing to add, because a lot of the conflict is going to come when your spouse thinks that either A, you're constantly working, right? Or they don't necessarily understand
that you are working,
the nature of your work. It's funny because this happened with my mom. My mom was over and she was helping clean the house. And
you love her for?
Oh my God, I so love her for that. So, but I'm like, sitting there, I'm plugging around on Facebook, and she was like, shouldn't you be working? And I was like, I am working. And she's like, no, you're playing on Facebook. And I'm like, no. And I'm like showing her, like, see all these business posts, and I'm answering all these questions. And she's like, that's not working. And then I went over and I showed her like the revenue coming in. And she was like, oh,
I guess that is working.
Okay. And like, because my mom, like, she owned businesses when I was growing up.
Yeah. She knows what a small business worker looks like.
Right. So, so she thinks, that small business looks a certain way. Right. And our small business doesn't look like that.
Yes. We engage in sharing information, and that's a vastly different thing than most other small businesses.
Right. So, your spouse though might have that same perception. Like, oh, all my spouse does, or all my significant other does, is play on Facebook all day, or play on the internet all day.
Yeah.
And, I think that the more that you share with them and like ask them questions, like, do you really understand? Do you understand what my business does? And if they don't, say, would you like to know?
Yeah.
Like, I'd love to, sit down and kind of explain to you what I do.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of spouses and significant others don't really understand what we do, especially when we play on the computer all day.
But the important thing is when we have these conversations, that even if we have a reason to be righteously annoyed, that's not the way to handle a conflict. If you go unannoyed, if you have this discussion, what you want me to show you what I do, Mister or Mrs. or whoever you are, you've lost. You've lost before you started. You have to come at it. And there's nothing wrong with expressing the way they're making you feel, but it has to be from a moment you don't feel that way. You have to be able to center yourself and have a rational discussion. And once again, it's about solving their problems and fears with you doing your dream work.
Right, exactly. So what do you do if the conflict is about money? And this is often one of the conflicts. If you're having issues with, this happens a lot when the budget's really tight, whether or not you have debt. If you have debt, it just makes it worse. Especially if you're a startup and your personal funds are feeding the startup. Okay. So I think the first thing you need to do is you need to make sure that you have a budget that you both agree on. Okay. This is something that helped us a lot when we were first starting the CPA firm because money was super tight. Oh my God, money was so tight. And, we needed to buy tax software and we needed to buy certain things. We had to sit down and budget for that and say, okay, how are we going to make this purchase?
Yeah.
And so if you have, especially if you're first starting out and there's not a lot of revenue coming in, you have to have that line item for your business.
Yeah.
That maybe it's, $50 a month or $100 a month, and take that money out of your personal account and put it in your business account.
And no matter how tight the budget is when you start, this is one of the points of integrity that you have to stick by, because money destroys relationships when it's abused.
Right.
And even if it's for a good purpose, and you know that if you could just get a little bit more, you could get ahead a little bit faster. One does not address the issue of risk in the scenario. There's always a risk that it's maybe not quite as fast as you think it's going to be. And it's usually unrealistic expectations is one of the big things that brings businesses down. You think about house flippers especially. There's lots of types of small business where there's a lot more risk than people realize because they think it's just easy. It's like printing cash. And sometimes it can be, but sometimes that valve might go off.
Right. And the thing is too, is and if you are, if your significant other also has a business and they have trouble with this, have a line item for them and say, okay, listen, every month we're going to put X amount of dollars into your business account until your business starts to take off and pay for itself.
Yeah.
So this is not only for your business, but this could also be for their business as well.
Yeah.
And just say, for tax purposes and everything else, this is where the money has to come from for your business. If you don't have enough money in your business account and you need to buy something, we need to have a meeting. Okay. And we've done that before. I mean, we've sat down and said, hey, listen, we should really get this thing for the business.
Yeah. And sometimes, there are essential things that you need that can maybe move the ball for you, free up time here to move over there. Or maybe with your tax software, that's for the CPA firm, you need that.
Right.
It's expensive buy. So you got to work those things out, and the thing you have to respect too is if they're doing something similar, like you're both doing stuff online, but they're doing theirs for a hobby, you have to respect that and budget that too. And maybe, who knows, it might turn into a dream business for them at some point. But you know what? It makes them feel a part of what's going on.
Yeah, and if you've ever watched one of our live videos where we're recording in the studio, you'll see we have thousands of dollars of books up here. And a lot of those were purchased, out of personal money before we really started the business.
Yeah.
So it's something that, you've got to learn to budget for. And hopefully you can learn to respect your significant other's hobbies and businesses when it comes to money as well. If this is something that you're having a lot of trouble with, you may, this probably extends beyond your business, right? Because if you don't have boundaries with your business funds, you probably don't have boundaries with your personal funds either. So this may be something that you need to do some work on. You may either need to hire a coach or, you may need to go see a professional, who can help you kind of change your mindset about your money.
And one of my thoughts too is, especially if debt is causing big problems in the budget, which For a lot of people we met who have budget problems, debt is usually at the heart of it. No matter how big their shovels are, they just pile on more debt. And we have a friend, Melissa, the coach, who sort of teaches the system based off of what Kristin and I use to get out of that, because that's really what gives you freedom.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And the freedom to start doing more things, and it might make more sense up front, instead of focusing so much on the business, is focusing on getting rid of some of that debt to get freedom to be able to have investitures on hobbies or on businesses.
Right. And I think that's one thing that really helped us. Jeff would not be full-time in the business right now had we not cleaned up our mess.
No.
Because by doing that, the risk of going into business was much lower, because the amount of money that we need to make in order to pay our monthly expenses is probably half of what it was 10 years ago.
Yes.
So if you kind of think about that, with the price of fuel going up, the price of food going up, our budget is half of what it was 10 years ago, because all that debt is gone.
And that gives you the $5 or $10 a month for hosting. That gives you the $15 a year for a domain, or if you get a little bit better tool, maybe $100 a month, maybe $200 a month. You can start affording, because now instead of going into debt, it is going to actually create tools to make your ability to deliver your business online a reality.
Exactly. So I think that that's really important. So, make sure that when you're having these discussions, that you're sharing the impact of your business with them. I think one of the things that really helped when we first started the CPA firm was when I could budget in, hey, there's going to be money coming into our personal account from the business.
Yeah.
And so when we started to see that, right, on a consistent basis, that really helped both of our mindsets.
Yeah, and what I would encourage you is, early on, it's very tempting, especially if you're managing it from your personal finances, is to just keep reinvesting any money you make back into the business. But I would say very early, find a way to start drawing some of it out consistently. It would be a small portion early on, but just so you can start, like, look, I'm starting to feed into this too. It's becoming a revenue stream. It helps show that there's a revenue stream there. But I think the other biggest mistake is, once again, and this goes back to the language of love we were talking about earlier, is you have to share the impacts on how they are going to like it. And if they don't care about money at all, which I really don't know anyone who doesn't care about money at all, but let's say, you do something like this where you get a new record download month. They probably don't care. That's good for you, but it really doesn't have an emotional impact to them. But, if because of that record download month, you've had a record revenue month, or whatever it is that they are going to attach to, whatever it is that impacts and makes their life better, share that part with them. The metrics of the business might not be that meaningful to someone, especially if they're not a small business owner.
Right. And I mean, it was funny how, at least for me, when the first time that we actually paid Jeff from Ingram Digital Media, that flipped a switch for me, because I think for a long time, right, we were running this business and we were getting money from various sources, but we invested a lot of it back in. And we finally said, okay, we're going to start taking payroll from this company. It was so cool to cut that first payroll check, and it wasn't a tremendous amount of money.
Yeah, it definitely will not replace, what I was making before I left my last job. But the thing was, now it becomes a revenue source, though. And there's actual something real there.
Right. I created our budget, for April, and there is a line item that says Jeff's payroll. And that's Ingram Digital Media, right? And so it was so cool to see that on the budget. And I think it kind of reinvigorated both of us to keep doing and keep working harder. And, because it is spending money into our budget.
And I think the other good thing is, too, as revenue starts to increase, try and buy out the personal money going into your business. So have the business money start replacing that as well, because then again, it's no longer a liability. That's meaningful. And then when it becomes a positive, a payroll thing, especially for someone who's used to getting paychecks, like, well, it's not as good as it used to be, but wow, that's something.
Mm-hmm. Right. And that's kind of one thing. That's an approach that we took with Ingram Digital Media is we put $1,000 into the account and we said, that's all the money we're putting in here. And we actually never spent that money, which I thought was pretty cool. That money is still sitting in the account, so I think if you can kind of agree with your significant other, say, listen, I would like X amount of money to get this business started, and then make yourself live off of, make your business live off of that.
And realize that, when you're picking out tools, sometimes you might need a manual step that another tool would take away from that. But, you can't be afraid to shift tools. And one of the things you should be looking for when you're getting tools for your business that involve information like data is the ability to migrate that data somewhere else. Because you don't want to get locked into a bad system. But you also want to be able, we are always paying attention to other stuff going, you know what? When we get to here in the business, that tool replaces this tool.
Right. And it's funny because there's one tool that I was looking at yesterday. I was like, oh my God, this would be such a game changer for us. But I really like paying Jeff.
Yes.
So when we get to, if our revenue increases by this much, we'll buy that tool.
Yes. And it's on both of our radars. We both want this tool. We will get this tool, but it doesn't have to be today.
Right. And so, you really have to be conscious of, your integrity, right? Your integrity with the commitments that you make to your significant other and to the commitments you're making to yourself, right? So if you say, I'm going to end each day at 5 p.m. and I'm going to spend the rest of the evening with my family, then you need to hold yourself accountable for that. And if you have trouble that, I have a really hard time with self-care and taking care of myself, this is not about you.
Yeah.
This is about being there for your loved ones. And so if you need to frame it in that way in order to do it, then that's what you need to do. Set an alarm for yourself that goes off 15 minutes before the end of your workday so that you've got time to wrap up and be done with your work.
Yes, I actually have an alarm that says clean up. It doesn't say clean up. I forget what it says, but essentially when I get to my makeup block of time at the end of the day, and I'm not perfect at doing this, but I'm trying to get better, is I stop what I'm working on, unless I'm trying to clean that up, and I go back, what did I miss today? What do I need to get back to?
Right. So, holding yourself accountable is incredibly important, not only for you, but for your significant other and your family.
And remember, you are the most adept person at manipulating yourself, but do it in a positive way. We're very good at getting ourselves to eat the ice cream when we don't need it. We're not so good at getting ourselves to do what we know we need to, and we don't. And you know what? One of the reasons there's conflict is because they see when you miss out on integrity. They might not point it out all the time, but they see it. They live with you. They know it. And the less integrity you have with yourself, the less they are going to have with you.
Right. And I think that often pops up in your significant other doubting your dreams, doubting your plans. If you're what we call a serial entrepreneur, that you have this business and you kind of sort of work on that, but then you're like, ooh, I like this idea better. And then you jump over here and then, oh, wait, I'm getting distracted. I'm going to start this thing. That caused your spouse to go, what the hell is she doing? What is he doing?
Yes, of course, this is the next new. Yeah, of course. They're not going to believe you. And should they? I don't know. I mean, can you prove it to yourself?
And the other thing too, I think, is that if you're not hitting your own goals, if you're not hitting your deadlines, so if you tell your spouse like, hey, I'm going to have a product up and running in 60 days, and that was a year ago, and now you want now you're kind of going back to your spouse saying, hey, can we invest in this tool? Because I think this tool is going to be the tool we need. They're not going to buy in.
Yeah.
Because they didn't see you, they didn't see you hit your last benchmark.
integrity is the biggest key to building dreams together.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and they need to do it for themselves, and you need to do it for yourself, because if it's easier to trust someone who they're not going to be perfect, and everyone's going to make mistakes. But you know what? If it's every day, or if it's 2 or 3 years later and you still don't have your product launched, can you blame them for not trusting you?
Right. And I know that, for some of you, that's probably really hard to hear. Okay. I'm sure that it is. But you have to, look at the image, right? A lot of what we do as small business owners, right, is we're creating this image, we're creating this character of who we are for our audience. Who are you portraying to your significant other?
Mm-hmm.
Are you being the person that you promised them that you were going to be? Right? And there's a lot of different ways you can look at that, because it could be you're not building the business that you told them that you were going to build. You're not being the parent or the spouse that you said that you were going to be. And so really look at the commitments that you've made and say, am I living that? And something may need to go.
Yeah. And I know one of the most brilliant things I've heard, and I think every guru talks about this one way or another, is don't try and lie to your audience to present yourself in a way that isn't you. Because sooner or later, they're going to figure it out. And once they do, you've lost all authority with them. With your family, and you know this, but I'm going to say it anyway. They see all of the behind the scenes. You can't hide it from them. You might be able to get away with it for a while, but sooner or later, they're going to figure it out. And this isn't to say that the people listening to the show don't have that kind of integrity, or sometimes you are going to fall short. But this is about holding yourself accountable. Say, oh, I can't believe I've missed this deadline. And then, if they're involved with you in the business, you plan out how to make up for it. If they're not with you in the business, it's okay to talk about your struggles at work.
Mm-hmm.
And they might not understand, but but you just want to be honest and upfront. You don't want to hide from people your shortcomings. And it'll hurt you if you do.
Yeah. And I think, if you are that person that you set, in 2 months, I'm going to have this thing out, and you've got 15 days left and you don't think you're going to hit it, talk to your significant other about it and ask them for their suggestions.
When I used to supervise people, the one thing I told them that would annoy me is if I found out at the deadline or after that they weren't going to be ready.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason is you're telling me just you were perfectly on track and you fell behind today. And if you could really honestly tell me that, I wouldn't care. But, if you've known for a month or 2 months or 3 months, or if I've even kind of known and I've come to you and said, hey, is everything working out? Is everything okay? And you go, yeah. Then, we're nowhere close.
Mm-hmm.
That leads to trust issues.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing, if you're looking for buy-in from your significant other, if you say, hey, you know what, I'm really struggling with this piece, sometimes getting an outside perspective is a good thing, right? So say, I'm really struggling with this aspect. What do you think? Because they might just say I don't really care. But more often than not, they won't. They'll say, well, I'm not really an expert on that, but let's talk it out. Let's see what you have. Or you could even say hey, I'm working on my website. What do you think of how it looks?
Yeah, just take a look at it for me and be brutally honest with me. And if you say that, mean it.
Yeah. Yeah. Don't go crying if they're brutally honest with you. But Jeff and I do this all the time. We're building stuff. Even if it's not, because Accounting in Focus is really my brand and Gardula is really his brand, and then Small Biz Life is our brand. There are times that I go to him and say, listen, what do you think of this for Accounting in Focus? You've come to me and said, what do you think about this for Gardula? Even though we don't really work a lot in those aspects of the business, we share things with each other and we ask for each other's opinions and we try to keep each other updated on what we're doing in those businesses. So, communication is key. Making your deadlines is key. And if you're not going to make them, talk about it.
And if you are having conflicts about it, you have to be able to step back and look at your behavior in the conflicts. Are you trying to approach this in a way to resolve the conflict? Or are you just engaging because you're angry? And it will happen sometimes. I'm not perfect. Sometimes even when it makes sense, Kristin's like, that doesn't work for me, and I'll get frustrated. I'm not even necessarily frustrated at her, but I'll get frustrated because it's like, I've been doing this and you're saying this sucks, and that hurts and it does sometimes hurt my feelings, but you know what? Ultimately, I'm trying to get to a better product, so my butt has to get over that quick.
Mm-hmm.
I know I need to do that, and I've taken actual steps to try and get over those kind of feelings more quickly, because sometimes maybe it could become better. And even if it's frustrating that I thought I was finally done with this and now I'm not, but if you're getting to a better place, you need to change yourself first. Because so often we talk about changing the people we love, and it's because we have this maybe fear of looking into the mirror. I know I have for years. And I'm not judging people for doing that. And you might not be that person, I don't know. But if you are, or for whatever reason you're having these conflicts, you have to be able to step back and look to see, is there a different approach to doing this? Am I trying to resolve this conflict the way I would with a customer in a customer service call? Would I offer my spouse the same respect I would a customer?
Yeah, absolutely. Never treat your customers better than you treat your significant other. And how many of us do that on a daily basis? Mm-hmm. So we hope that this gives you some things to think about. We'd love your feedback on this episode. And also, we're starting to work on our episodes for the summer. Mm-hmm. So if you have a great idea for an episode, email us at support@smallbizlife.com, and in the subject line, put show topic. Mm-hmm. Okay. And let us know what you would like to hear from us this summer.
And you might not think of one right now, but I'm a big fan of notebooks. Have a notebook with you. Because remember, one of our big things is we want to help get the crap out of your life. Maybe it's in your business or in the rest of your life, somewhere evolving in your life. Just write down and send it to us, and maybe we'll have no idea what we're talking about, and we'll do research and we'll find people who know what they're talking about, or it's something that we know enough to talk about, but we'll try and address those issues because there's such a wide range of issues that people have. There's a lot of crap that we need to dig.
Right. And, here's the thing, a lot of times we think we're the only one that's struggling with this thing. Mm-hmm. And it's funny because we've had people submit podcast ideas and we're like, wow, that's a really good idea. Lots of people struggle with that. And they're like, really? I'm not the only one? You're not the only one.
Yeah, you're probably not the only one. And if you're worried about being the only one, to say, hey, please don't mention me when you talk about this, but I'm struggling with this. Is there something you could do? And we won't talk about you. If you want us to say, hey, give you a shout out, let us know. We'll give you a shout out too.
Yep.
You and your business.
Right. But, our podcast is only as good as our community. Mm-hmm. And you guys feed us so many great ideas. We want to make sure that this podcast benefits you. So when you've got those ideas, email them to support@smallbizlife.com. And we can't wait to see how we can help. Thanks so much. Have a great week.
This was Small Biz Life.